Hello, friend. Thank you for stopping by. My name is Lana, and today I'm going to talk about my daughter and the terrible twos. Actually, my daughter has always been a wonderful baby, a wonderful little girl. However, there was a period of time where she was going through her terrible twos. And that's what I thought it was. That, okay, this is what everyone's talking about. Terrible twos, and your kid is out of control. When I started this new job, my daughter was around 2 years old, and I moved into an apartment, a townhome, that was close to my job. And originally, my mom was supposed to watch her, and then it ended up being my sister. And it was just too far away it was about 45 minutes, almost an hour away. And so I decided to try to find a babysitter. And I got really lucky because a friend at work, she had a neighbor, she wanted to make extra money babysitting. And then when I mentioned to her that I was looking for a babysitter, she hooked us up. And everything seemed great. She was very flexible. It's hard to find a daycare when you start working at 6 o'clock because most of them, they don't even open until 6:30 or 7. So I felt really lucky. And where I lived, she lived in the middle between my home and my job. So it just worked out great. And many times what I would do, since I had to work so early, is Janice gave me the key to her house, and she said, just come on in and I'll just put her on the sofa. I'll have a blanket and a pillow for her. So just put her on the sofa and just lock the door and then go to work. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky to have this situation. In my head, I was thinking that she was too young to be in a traditional daycare, so this was the perfect situation. So some time had gone by, and I did notice that when I took her to Janice's house, and if she woke up, she would yell and scream and kick, and she didn't want to go. So I just assumed it's because she's half asleep and she didn't want to be taken out of her bed, and it was just a typical kid thing. Well, as time went on, she was having terrible tantrums. I would pick her up, and sometimes I had to go to the store or I had to run errands, and she would be the little girl laying on her back, kicking and screaming as loud as she could. And I was so embarrassed because people would walk by and look at me like I was a terrible mother. And that happened a lot. And one of the things that she used to do, the townhome that we lived in, one side was the kitchen and the living room, and then there was a loft in the middle, and then there were the 2 bedrooms and the bathroom, and then the door to the backyard. And what she would do is we would come through the garage, which went straight into the loft, and immediately she went into a tantrum, a terrible, terrible tantrum. And she would just scream and yell, and I knew that the neighbors would hear. And we also, in the loft area, there were all these bookcases, and she had books and toys and knickknacks. And she would just take them all and just throw everything on the floor. So when she was done with that, I would have this big pile of books and toys that I had to put away every single night. And her tantrums didn't get any better. I remember one time I was with a boyfriend and we were driving on the freeway, and then she started having a tantrum again, and he had to pull off to the side of the road and go back there and try to calm her down. So that situation happened a couple of times. And then I called my mom because I didn't know what to do. I just didn't know what to do. So I called my mom, and she told me, you have got to give her the biggest spanking that you ever given her. And I wasn't really comfortable with that. But she said, you have to spank her. You have to spank her until she's black and blue. And I think I wasn't in my right mind because I was just so frustrated. I didn't know what to do. And the next time she went into that tantrum mode where she's throwing all her books and toys on the floor, I did spank her. But to my surprise, she's a sassy little girl. To my surprise, she was fighting me back. She was this tiny little thing, because even when she was 2, she was petite. And she was hitting me back, and she was crying and screaming, and I'm spanking her. And then all of a sudden, I looked down at her, and her face was red. She was crying, so there was tears all over the place. And I looked at her butt, and immediately I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? What the hell am I doing? And I just held her, and I told myself, I'm never going to do this again. This is cruel. This is not me. So I just held her, and I rocked her, and she was still kicking and trying to hit me and get away from me. And I just kept holding her, and I just kept rocking her and just telling her, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I will never do this again. I will never do this again. So then I started thinking, there's got to be another way. I'm not going to use spanking as a way to stop her from her tantrum. Besides, it didn't work for her, which is actually a really good thing that it didn't work, because she fought back. So I thought, I'm going to call her pediatrician and make an appointment with just the 2 of us. So I was very lucky. I was able to see her right away. I went into her office and I told her what was happening. The first thing out of her mouth was, how much sugar are you feeding her? And I thought, I don't feed her any sugar. It's very rare. I don't feed her apple juice. I don't feed her sugary cereals. I was committed to not giving her too much sugar. So, and then she asked, well, what is her daycare provider feeding her? And I thought, I really don't know. And she said, you should ask her, and when you find out, come back and see me. So the next day, when I went to go pick her up, I asked her what she was feeding her. And she said, oh, in the morning, sometimes I'll make pancakes with syrup, or we'll have this sugary cereal, we'll have Captain Crunch or Fruity Pebbles. And then about an hour later, we'll take a walk. Oh, I just want to mention that she had a daughter the same age, around 2, and she had a 4-year-old son. So she would take them all for a walk every single day and walk to 7-Eleven, and she would get them a donut and a Slurpee. And I thought, oh my God. And then she'd say, at lunchtime we'd have hot dogs, and I would give them some cookies and some treats. And then everyone would play, and then I would give them an afternoon snack, and it was a sugary snack. So I thought, oh my God, it's just sugar after sugar after sugar. I've never given her that much sugar. I don't even have that stuff in my house. I went back and saw her pediatrician and told her what she was feeding her. And the first thing she said was, she's basically drugging her. She may as well give her cocaine, because your daughter is 2 years old, and to have that much sugar, it's equivalent to giving her drugs like cocaine. And you need to have her stop. I'm like, oh my gosh. I figured she was going to say that. And so the next day I talked to Janice, and while I'm having this conversation with her, she had an attitude with me. And I didn't really care. She's my daughter, not yours. So then the next day I went to pick her up, and she came up to me and she said, I just want to let you know that we went to 7-Eleven so I can get my kids a Slurpee and a donut. And I looked at your daughter and I said, you can't have any because your mommy won't let you have it. And I thought, I lost a lot of respect for her, that I don't think I want her to watch my daughter anymore. So it turns out that as soon as I stopped taking her to that woman, she became normal. Almost immediately she went back to normal. No more tantrums. I had my sweet little girl back. And I know it was the sugar. Obviously it was the sugar. And I ended up taking her to this daycare, which in the beginning I wasn't too sure about because I thought she was too young. But I was completely wrong. My daughter loved it there. She loved it. She didn't have any tantrums whenever I had to take her. And the staff loved her. They were always complimenting me on her, that she's just such a delightful little girl. Even a couple of the women who worked there liked her so much. And one of them had a daughter the same age as my daughter, and she said, whenever you need a babysitter, I will babysit. If you need to go away for the weekend, I will babysit, because I love your daughter and she gets along really well with my daughter. And that made me feel really good. And then what ended up happening was Janice ended up getting a job, and she ended up putting her kids in the same daycare. Her little girl never spoke. She couldn't talk, but she probably just didn't spend enough quality time with her to even realize that. But what ended up happening was no one knew that I knew Janice. And sometimes I would see her husband picking up her kids, and he was fine. You know, we were cordial and we would say hello. And he's the one that told me that Janice had gone back to work. But some of the other parents and some of the other staff, because her little girl was in the same class as my daughter, and some of them that I was close to told me that, I can't remember that little girl's name, said that they're getting a lot of complaints from other parents that that little girl was biting the other kids. That was no surprise. And eventually they had to kick out both those kids, one for biting and the other one for being too aggressive. So I learned a big lesson that I really should do a little bit more research and to really find out really what's best for my daughter for her age. Thank goodness I had my daughter back, and everything was fine after that. I really believed. I believed before, and I believed, especially after that situation, not to feed kids too much sugar. It's kind of hard for me sometimes with my grandson. He doesn't have tantrums, thank goodness. I do give him treats now and again. I don't overdo it because I know it's not good. That's my story about what happened. When a kid is having a tantrum, there might be other reasons, and spanking them is not the answer. So I learned a lot in that situation. Let me know if you had any similar situations. I'd love to hear about it. And thank you for watching. See you later. Bye.